Hi everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Build. If you just found this place, then welcome. And if you're returning, I'm glad to have you back. I'm Alex, and this is my channel where we explore and theory craft different character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Today, we are doing a quick build. We'll be exploring a briefly summarized character build for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And as always with our quick build series, if there's ever any builds you'd like to see me explore in the future, be sure to let me know in the comments below. The concept for our build today is a martial damage dealer / slight tank, given that we're going to try and get a little bit of durability, who overall primarily focuses on cold damage. Since we are getting closer to the full winter / holiday season, I thought it might be nice to throw in a more winter and cold oriented build. So for today, we are building the Snowman. There isn't much to the Snowman besides the fact that we are speccing into cold damage. We are going to try and be a martial frontline melee damage dealer who has some good durability and a fair bit of mobility as well, in order to allow us to zip around the battlefield, dealing out a lot of damage and taking a lot of punishment. This isn't really specific to something a snowman would do. However, I think it would be kind of funny to play a snowman in a one-shot D&D game who's a surprisingly agile threat and not just a stationary snowman that most people might know. Starting into the actual build now at character creation. With our lineage, we are going to want to be the Reborn lineage. I think that the Reborn is actually thematically appropriate for the Snowman, and I'll get to why in a sec, but if you wanted to, custom lineage would work as well. The stats will change up a bit, but you get a free feat. And the reason I think Reborn works so well for a Snowman type character is because Reborn is not meant to just capture an undead player character, but also a constructed one. Warforged, I suppose, would also work for our lineage. The sort of flavor text that goes along with them says that other Reborn, besides the one that are just undead or those who have met death and came back, are marvels of magic or science, being stitched together from disparate beings or bearing mysterious minds in manufactured bodies. Whatever their origins, Reborn now have a new life and seek experiences and answers all their own. We are, of course, a stitched-together, constructed being as opposed to one that has died and come back, and we're mainly a marvel of magic. We'll probably have 2 sticks for our arms, a carrot or button nose, and of course 2 eyes made out of coal. And I think it's pretty fitting that we are a marvel of magic that really has only come back to life when a magical hat was placed upon our head. For our stats, though, because of the way the Reborn works, we could take a +2 to one stat and a +1 to another one, or we could take a +1 and 3 different ability scores. And that's what we're going to do for the second one. For our stats, we're going to want Strength to be at 16, Dexterity to be at 14, Constitution to be at 14, Intelligence to be at 8, Wisdom to be at 14, and Charisma to be at 9. We assigned 9 points into Strength and added a +1 there to get it to 16. We assigned 5 points to Dexterity as well as Wisdom, and then increased both of them by +1 in order to get them to their 14s. And then we added 7 points to Constitution to just leave it at 14. We're a very multiple ability score dependent build in this case, and you don't have to be, because you could technically specialize to be more focused on just like Dexterity and Wisdom, or just Strength and Constitution. But for the sake of this build and the way I'm going about it, we're trying to get each one of those to be relatively strong, and then we'll specialize from there. Finally, for our background, any background really fits. All in all, a lot in character creation. And just know that this is kind of setting up for the fact that we're a bit of an absurd character, like any snowman character would be in Dungeons & Dragons. Jumping into the actual level breakdown of the build now, for the first 10 levels that we'll look at, we're going to be a bit of a mixture of Barbarian and Monk. 2 very distinct, but also somewhat synergist, surprisingly, classes. We're going to start off as a Barbarian at level 1. This will give us some extra health to start off our character with. We're also going to gain Rage and Unarmored Defense. For Barbarian, we're then just jumping the next 5 levels into Monk. The reason for this is because Monk is going to give us some Unarmed Strikes, Unarmored Defense, Unarmored Movement, key points to be able to use some special Monk abilities, such as Flurry of Blows. And of course, since we are a monk, we also have martial arts, meaning we gain 2 unarmed strikes right away. That is kind of going to act like our extra attack, at least until we get to our overall level 6, where we get the actual extra attack from Monk, as well as Stunning Strike. But the real reason we're going Monk is for level 3. At level 3, we get to pick the type of monk we want to be, and we want to be the Way of the Ascendant Dragon monk. With the Way of the Ascendant Dragon, we gain the Draconic Disciple feature. Draconic Disciple has a few different abilities related to dragons specifically. We get Draconic as a language, we have intimidation bonuses, but what we really want is the Draconic Strike. Whenever we damage a target with an unarmed strike attack, we can change the damage type from bludgeoning to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. Of course, since we're a snowman, we want it to be cold damage, and so we can now punch with some frozen fists. We also gain the Breath of the Dragon, which is another relatively thematic feature for not just a dragon monk, but for a snowman like ourselves. When we take the attack action on our turn, we can replace one of the attacks with a breath of, they say draconic energy, I'll say cold energy. It's either a 20-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 feet wide, and we can choose what damage type to make it. Of course, we're going to pick cold damage. Obviously, if you were to fight something that is resistant to cold damage, we're kind of useless, but then we could choose to use a different damage type. For most of the time, though, I'll assume that we're using cold damage, and either punching with cold damage, breathing a giant cone of cold as the spirit of the winter that we are. After level 3, and before we get extra attack and stunning strike, we're also going to go to level 5 and gain an ability score improvement / feat. Because we are so multiple ability score dependent, we're just going to want to improve any ASI of our choice. For me, I would suggest strength and just get more damage output, but if you wanted more wisdom to make your winter breath a little bit more powerful, that could work. If you wanted to improve your constitution or dexterity in order to improve your unarmored defense and your health or AC, that works as well. The back half of our levels, after level 6 where we picked up the monk's version of extra attack as well as stunning strike, we're going to continue with Barbarian. At level 7, we're Barbarian 2, level 8, we're Barbarian 3, level 9, we're Barbarian 4, and then we'll pause and jump back to Monk. But let's talk about those Barbarian levels for a sec. At level 7, we gain Reckless Attack, so now those strength-based punches that deal cold damage also can be used recklessly. At level 8, we become a 3rd level Barbarian, meaning we get a subclass choice there as well. And I'm going to say that we're going to want to pick the Storm Herald Barbarian. Essentially with the Storm Aura feature, we gain an aura that also comes with our rage. That aura is based off a specific area of land, and for us, we want the tundra since we are a spirit of winter, more or less. When we activate the rage, and then as a bonus action for every turn while we're raging thereafter, we can just give each creature of our choice 2 temporary hit points. 2 temporary hit points to all of our allies around us, which could be our entire party potentially. Every single round, if we were using it every single round, is a lot of reduced damage, even though it's just 2. For us, it's even better because we're raging, so it effectively doubles to about 4 temporary hit points. Of course, the more levels we put into Barbarian, the more temporary hit points we'll get when we use this feature, and that's just extra damage reduction overall. This is the main reason why I wanted to go Barbarian, was for this Storm Herald feature. And you don't have to pick it up, and you really don't even have to use it, but for what it's worth, we now have both a very powerful defensive ability and a very powerful offensive ability. The other things we get from level 9 and 10 are another ability score increase / feat, which again should probably just be spent increasing an ability score of our choice. I'd probably go with Constitution if I already increased Strength, but that's just me. You could pick whatever you'd like. At level 10, we go back to Monk so we can actually gain Key Empowered Strikes, meaning that we now can punch magically. This doesn't really do anything if we're just punching and making the damage cold damage, since cold damage would already get around resistance to non-magical piercing, slashing, bludgeoning, that sort of stuff. But if ever we go up against an enemy that has resistance to cold damage, now we can just punch regularly and it'll deal full damage as well. Finally, at level 11, we can choose to either continue up Monk or continue up Barbarian. Both admittedly have their merits. If you went more Barbarian, you'd gain features that would make you a little bit more durable. You'd gain more rages. Eventually, you'd gain brutal critical if you went that high up. And if you went up Monk, you'd gain more damage, as we could eventually, hopefully, gain a D8 for our martial arts die. We'd be able to gain more key points. Hopefully, we'd be able to improve our wisdom, make our key-focused DC features a little bit better. And we'd also gain more unarmored movement. You can pick any breakdown that you would like. I personally would probably go 12 Monk and 8 Barbarian, just to get the ability score improvements as well as the extra advantage on initiative rolls from Barbarian. And I think that would make for a good breakdown, but you can mix it up and choose whatever you would like. Alright, with all that said, let's summarize the build. We are a very goofy and absurd character, but that's kind of what we're meant to feel like given that we are a snowman. really hit that snowman type of theme, given that we are a magical construct from the reborn lineage. Our stats are spread very wide and relatively thin. That spreading allows us to pick up these interesting features that surprisingly synergize pretty well together. A barbarian that can unarmed strike with strength is relatively strong on its own, but then being able to change the damage type to something like cold damage to just bypass resistances relatively early on is all the better, and pretty thematic while we do it. We're also a big martial character that has an on-demand, or at least relatively on-demand, area of effect attack. Our winter's breath from the Way of the Ascendant Dragon can be used when we're going up against a horde of little enemies that we just want to try and hit as many of them as possible. And that's something that not a lot of frontline martial characters actually get access to. Sure, there are some cleave abilities, but this one's not really a cleave. It's just an area of our choice. And that's really nice. One thing I will say is that if you did just go 17 levels into Monk and only 3 levels into Barbarian, we'd gain most of what we wanted from Barbarian anyways, and we'd actually be able to augment our breath even more with Ascendant Aspect, allowing us to spend an extra key point in order to have the breath become a 60-foot cone or a 90-foot line. And that's just way better than what it already is. Overall, we have lots of damage, a fair amount of mobility, and we're pretty durable given that we're a barbarian with rage, and we could have a fair amount of health depending on what ability scores you increased. We really feel like a snowman who is just slipping and sliding all over the battlefield, whether there is ice already there or whether we're pretending to make it. And then we're just coming in for a really powerful punch or letting loose with a breath of sheer winter cold. Or I'd say we're not just a good snowman, we are almost an embodiment of winter as a whole. Let me know what you thought of the build, or what you would add or change, maybe more of an actual snowman type theme, or maybe more cold synergy for that type of character, someone who really likes cold damage. I focused a lot on cold damage for a martial character, but maybe there's a caster out there that you would have. Maybe there's a caster version you'd have in mind that's focused a lot on cold damage. Thank you so much for coming on the journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.